This is Super Cool Toxic Workplace, Episode 11, Reconciliation. When we last left you, we were contemplating the future of Mikkeller, and if the people you heard from in our broadcast would be acknowledged. 10 episodes, 418 minutes. Hundreds of lives impacted. When you consider that it was not only the survivors and victims, but Fanny and other survivor advocates and activists who worked tirelessly to bring about the craft beer workplace reckoning. But also the lives impacted include the lives of the current Mikkeller employees, who have suffered greatly through the last year of crisis, I would imagine. And on top of that is the loved ones of everyone that I've just mentioned. But this episode, we have answers and updates. On the 13th of January 2022, Mikkeller made an announcement. The company have apologised to and acknowledged the survivors, including the people that were featured in this podcast. This apology and acknowledgement came also from the founder, who stated he took responsibility for what happened when he was CEO. And beyond that, Mikkeller have now announced that they have taken the concrete step of hiring a third-party firm to manage and conduct a reconciliation program for those impacted by their workplaces. In their words, making it right. They actually hired my company, Hand and Heart, to be that third-party firm. I'd like to encourage you to read the announcement from Mikkeller, and you can do that on their social media channels. On the same day, my company also released a statement. I'm going to read that to you now. Today, Mikkeller has announced they have engaged Hand and Heart Consulting as an external reconciliation advisor. Myself, Kate Bailey, the managing director and founder of Hand and Heart, and my team will conduct and implement a reconciliation program for former and current employees of Mikkeller who have had bad experiences in Mikkeller workplaces. I encourage everyone to read Mikkeller's statement via their social media profiles. On our next slides, I will introduce the program and detail where more information can be accessed. As an independent advisor, Hand and Heart is now the contact for questions, comments, and outreach surrounding the reconciliation process, and for those who would like to, we invite you to email admin@handandheart.eu. In the role of external reconciliation advisor, myself and the Hand and Heart team, which includes independently contracted legal counsel, will manage a reconciliation framework to make things right with those who are affected in Mikkeller workplaces. Through this professionally developed framework, Hand and Heart will facilitate the goal and purposes of the program, which is to reach an offer of reconciliation with each case that is registered, and to ensure all historic cases from Mikkeller's workplaces are acknowledged and addressed with a secure, external, third-party process. This is a detailed and individual process, so we have set up a webpage, www.handandheart.eu/Mikkeller, with more details and a comprehensive FAQ. We will also make FAQs available via Instagram story highlights and ensure changes and updates are communicated through this process. The most important action we take today is opening the Hand and Heart platform for those affected to be able to register a case. We have designed the registration to be as simple as possible, with registration taking 5 to 10 minutes. We do not want to collect sensitive information at this stage and want to ensure we follow all EU data and privacy regulations before the next steps. You are under no obligations to proceed when registering a case. The next step is Hand and Heart will contact you and inform you in detail about the process as it applies to your individual case. We have included sections for additional information should you feel your registration requires it, and every case is handled on an individual basis. For those that have been affected and would like to be a part of the reconciliation program, this is your first and only step at this time. In light of today's announcement, I will also be releasing a final episode of Super Cool Toxic Workplace. This is totally meta, guys. I'm reading the statement while I'm making the podcast. You get it. We just need a little fun here. But I am releasing the podcast to provide as much information and transparency as possible. Mikkeller, led by the CEO, has been actively cooperative in their efforts to bring this program to fruition since the last Super Cool Toxic Workplace episode was published. I am encouraged by these consistent actions, responsiveness, and their genuine commitment to the practical and ideological components of the independent reconciliation program. It is with these sentiments that Hand and Heart shall begin the work of delivering this program for former and current employees of Mikkeller. As a final note for today's announcement, I want to thank every person who has worked for this moment of acknowledgement and change. Okay, let's unpack this. Because for a podcast who had a pretty strong focus on just how much words matter, it feels important to start with the word reconciliation. What does it mean as it's applied in this context? First, I'd like to talk about the words that I didn't want to use and why I ended up choosing reconciliation. I didn't want to use settlement because the implication is of settling, and more often than not in the context of workplace cases, it represents something unbalanced, not quite right. The other word was payout because it implies that there is no human element of recognition in this process. It implies that the only way to amend is with cash, and that's not always the case. People have different needs, and reconciliation will feel different and therefore have to be delivered differently to each person. But for me, the very basic definition of reconciliation highlights two really key things that are quite crucial to doing this justly and fairly. This definition comes from dictionary.com. Reconciliation is the process of two people or groups in a conflict agreeing to make amends or come to a truce. So from this definition, we can glean that 1, it is a process, and 2, there is agreeing. Agreement is inherently representative of something mutual, and that's so important and crucial to why this process is different. It is also worth noting the way that reconciliation is applied in accounting, which is reconciliation is the process of ensuring two sets of records are in agreement. For example, Mikkeller have said that they acknowledge and believe those who came forward. In this sense, those records are now reconciled. There is a mutual acceptance of a debated truth. Another example, my company will document the claims, and then those claims will be reviewed for recommendation by local legal counsel. So our records match their records, which will be the records Mikkeller will agree as being true. So the point of reconciliation in this sense is that records match, and in turn, the present and future is based on a commission of truth about the past. That's why it's called a reconciliation program. And there is an FAQ page that will be consistently updated via www.handandheart.eu/Mikkeller. We will be next updating the FAQs during the week of the 24th of January. One thing I'd like to discuss in those updates is the framework that we'll be announcing to factor in all of the elements of this process. Something that can maybe be adapted in the future once this work is complete, that can be used by beer businesses, and in fact all businesses, to create better workplaces, safer workplaces. This framework will be called the Beer Reconciliation Model. That's B.E.E.R. Believe, engage, evaluate, reconcile. I think those are strong words, and I look forward to updating everyone about this framework in the near future. For now, I'm not choosing to go back through the remainder of the broadcast of Super Cool Toxic Workplace. I want to make this primarily focused on this reconciliation program, because I believe that is the conversation we need to have right now. You'll also note I've chosen not to include any other voices in this broadcast. Frankly, I feel those who have come forward deserve some relief and privacy. They are believed, and there is a process in place to now support them. Beyond this group as the priority, I also think it's a moment that we all need to take and really try and understand what reconciliation means for ourselves. There are consumers, journalists, community members, critical voices from all perspectives, people whose livelihoods are wrapped up in craft beer. There are consumers, journalists, community members, critical voices from all perspectives who need to reconcile with this outcome. It's strange, it's dislocating, especially after so many months of conflict. But are we all not engaged in the betterment of workplaces? Specifically this one? And now Mikkeller have joined that conversation in a meaningful capacity. The two most binary points of the conversation must overcome a fear of each other. In one way, it's quite tragic that we don't really know what to do or how to reconcile these types of things, because we rarely get an outcome that works for those impacted most. Simply, there is no blueprint. But you remember who and what is most important, and you take a step. You take a call. And for that conversation to be productive, both sides must be working towards the same goal. And I think for Mikkeller, led by their CEO, and myself, The goal was to answer the question, is there something we can do to make this right? When I think back to the countless moments of hardship for so many who have been connected and affected by this, well, it's actually it can be quite hard not to get emotional when you think about some of those people's faces. But I have to now think that we have to make this mean something. We have to make this mean lasting change, and we have to make this something valuable. We have to try. And we have to use the professional mechanisms available to us to do so. We have to turn this conversation around. We have to do the work if we want our workplaces of the future to have tangible solutions and a path forward for all. Equity for all. Is this reconciliation going to contribute to answering some of these big questions? I will work for it to be, and I hope for it to be. But it's only time and the way that those feel who were affected, who have gone through the process, feel about it, that will tell. All I know is we have to try. So that's where I'm going to leave this episode and this series for now, with a moment of gratitude and of recognition and awe towards everyone that came forward and everyone that supported them. We saw the best and worst of craft beer all at once in 2021, and the collective stand that has been taken has now ensured that this industry has a mandate. Speaking of which, we'll be updating the super cool Toxic Workplace website and the page on the Hand and Heart website to include some additional resources in the form of people who can help make workplaces better. They can help your workplace become a super cool, safe workplace. That sounds really good. So be sure to check that out. Thank you to everyone who contributed to this production. You've been amazing and selfless, and thank you to the listeners and to all for simply caring. Enough people cared about the right thing needing to happen all at once and so passionately that the right thing can happen now. I'm Kate Bailey, and this was Super Cool Toxic Workplace. Come in and the tide's gonna turn and it's all gonna roll.